Should I start? Benga caller?
Yes, and we're live.
Okay, thanks. All right, so good evening, everyone who is joining us tonight for Roundtable for the first time as New York City Coalition Coalition for Educating Parents and Families. I just messed up that. Oh God, I totally messed that up. I apologize. New York City Coalition for Educating Families Together. Thank you. It is all Senator Lou's fault. He makes me nervous. So.
Why are you nervous, Farah?
Well, we have a new name and everything, and you're here. So, okay. So now I will pass the microphone to Angela Harris, who's going to start us off. Thank you, Angela.
Thank you, Farah. Good evening, Senator Lou, parents, and every education stakeholder on this webinar. Tonight is a big night for the New York City Coalition for Educating Families Together as we debut our work citywide. We are an organization seeking to advocate for and not just K-12 students, but families as a whole. As we are thinking about reimagining education, we know that truly educating a child means wrapping ourselves around the whole child, which means wrapping ourselves around whole families and communities. We are excited to work with all the education stakeholders to realize that vision. Senator Lou, we are proud to have you join us, not only at this roundtable, but in the fight for a remote education option that New York City needs so badly. We are happy to have you as an ally on this issue, and we hope on many other issues, because we as parents believe that the DOE needs serious reimagining and rigorous oversight. We are counting on you as a partner to continue to pass legislation that will make the DOE more transparent and more accountable to all the stakeholders in education so that the needs of our students and families are met. We believe that mayoral control must go in order to make space at the table of decision-making for parents, students, communities, and other education stakeholders. We also believe that this moment calls for a different politics and a different body politic that are capable of ushering in a new vision for educating our children and our populace so that this city and this state can remain great. Tonight, we ask for your partnership on all those fronts, and we look forward to designing with you this education movement, because nothing short of a movement will bring the changes that we as parents are demanding. Thank you. And now I will pass the microphone to Maria Glusman to introduce the one and only Senator Lou, who is our champion on the remote option for our students and families. Maria.
Thank you, Angela. Good evening, everyone. My name is Maria, and I am a parent to a first grader, a proud parent to a first grader. I would like to introduce New York State Senator representing Northeast Queens, John Liu. A Queens native, Mr. Liu is the first Asian American to win a legislative office in New York and the first one to win a citywide office. His public service, both at the city and the state level, have been nothing but exemplary. As a New York City comptroller, he fought for transparency and against wasteful government spending. To that end, he created checkbooknyc.com, a nationally acclaimed app that tracks government spending. Mr. Liu also helped to expand programs that revitalize our communities and help promote minority-owned businesses. An educator himself, Mr. Liu has been a champion for city schools, securing millions of dollars for schools in Flushing and other areas of Queens as a member of the City Council. In addition to being a member of education, higher education, rules, and other committees in the State Senate, Mr. Liu serves as the chair of the New York City Education Committee. Senator Liu has proven himself to be a vocal advocate for New York City schools and communities. For example, He helped to pass an important anti-bullying law, Dignity for All Schools Act. On September 17th of this year, Mr. Liu sponsored Senate Bill S7381. If passed, this bill would effectively restore remote instruction for public school students in areas of moderate to high COVID transmission. Senator Liu, it is a great honor to have you with us tonight.
Thank you so much, Maria, for that incredible introduction. Way too generous. Can you hear me and see me okay? All right, for some reason, I'm frozen on my own screen, but I can see all of you and hearing all of you. I'm sorry, Isha, you're saying no? So am I frozen?
Yes, sir, that's correct. I can't see
You are frozen.
your screen is black
Yeah,
for me.
I don't know why. I mean, I can see all of you fine, and I can hear all of you fine, but I don't know. Maybe it's better. Well, I'm not sure what to do. Let me stop the video and start again. Sorry for this delay. Okay, well, I'm not sure why my video is not coming on, but I'm getting a message that says cannot start video. This is terrible for the live streaming.
Do you want to
What-
try coming back in, going out and coming back in? We don't mind.
I'm
We'll
certainly,
wait for you.
okay, all right, bear with me. I'm gonna leave and I'll come right back in. All right,
Thank you. Hi, Sujin. Is that the way to pronounce your name? Or Sujen?
Yes.
Can you hear me and see me now?
Yes.
Yep, that worked.
Okay, well, be careful what you wish for. In any event, thank you so much for that introduction, and I'm so happy to be with all of you. I want all of you and many of you again. And this is a follow-up from a meeting that I had with Farah and a group of Bronx parent leaders on the issue of remote learning and other school issues. So happy to be with you. And you know, I had been talking with the DOE and City Hall for months, talking about the need for the remote option. Unfortunately, I think they just were too stubborn, if not belligerent, on the issue, and so we now have to pursue legislative remedies. The bill that I've sponsored and now has a number of co-sponsors in the Senate. We also have an assembly sponsor, so you know that it takes both houses to pass a bill. That is in the works. So it's not a complicated bill. It just, you know, it doesn't require remote. And we all understand that in-person learning is preferable. We all would love to have our kids in the school buildings, interacting with their teachers face to face and learning from other students in the classroom as well. But the reality is that we ain't out of this COVID. It's still an emergency situation, and we are considered under CDC federal standards to be in a high transmission area. So, you know, I concur with all the parents who don't feel comfortable sending their children into school buildings and are asking for a remote option. And so that's what this legislation would require the city of New York to provide the remote option when transmission rates are high. Compounding on top of that, the high positivity rates. It's only been a week and a half of school, and when we had the meeting a few weeks ago, we didn't know what precisely was going to happen, but our worst fears have come true. High positivity rates, still questions about the whole testing process. Apparently, large numbers of kids are not being tested because parents, for whatever reason, have not sent in their forms. We also have hundreds of classes being shut down in just a week. And even at least one entire school has been shut down. And so anytime these things occur, the kids are left with zero learning whatsoever. And that's why that remote option needed to be in place. And, you know, some people would say, well, having the remote option, having the remote option, you know, it takes resources from the normal operations of the school. It does take resources, but the Department of Education is flush with additional resources from the federal government to help cope with this COVID crisis. So there's just no excuse, absolutely irresponsible for the mayor and the DOE to not provide a remote learning option. I do want to thank parent leaders in this meeting and other parent leaders who I've met with consistently over the summer to just figure out how best to address the needs of our kids. And I think the bigger picture, there are lots of bigger issues here, which I think we're going to talk about a number of them. So let me not talk for too long because I know we have a lot of issues to discuss. Thanks so much for having me, and thank you to all the parents who are so committed in.
You muted yourself, and you're muted.
I don't know what's going on here, but
technology. That's
yeah,
all. It's not you. You didn't do anything. Technology.
Anyway, well, I don't know. I may have clicked something by accident, but it takes a lot of time and effort, and on top of that, you have your other things going on. You have to keep you on top of your children's education. So I really thank you. What you're doing is not only for the benefit of your child, but it's for the benefit of all the children in this city collectively.
Thank you so much for that, Senator Liu, and so much that you have said. It would be repetitive in some ways to re-say them because we do have parent leaders here who are ready to say them again, but we're not really saying them for you. We are saying them for the parents who may be listening who are not yet on board with the cause so that they know to support you and your bill by calling their elected officials to make sure that their elected officials will be voting. So we'll go through that anyway, and if you don't mind, I'll let the parents present and then I'll let you respond afterwards.
Absolutely.
So, thank you so much. So Marie, you have the floor.
Senator Liu, hi, it's nice to see you again.
Nice
you
to
may
see you,
remember
Marie.
me from the last time as the physician standing in the middle of a street yelling into my phone over traffic while wearing an N95. That was me. I'm no longer standing on the street. But for those of you who don't know me, my name is Dr. Marie Will. I'm a physician, I'm a biomedical scientist, and I'm a New York City school parent. So at our last panel, we discussed, the negative impact that COVID already had on the kids in the US, if you remember, and the children in New York City also, in the Bronx in particular, and how the lack of remote option put these kids at greater risk. I mentioned then, if you may remember, that the plan as it was presented to us at the time was inadequate. Well, I was wrong. The plan that was unfolded since is not inadequate, it's reckless. It's worse than I ever imagined it would be. Well, the vaccine mandate was a good first step, but even that hasn't been implemented. As you know, they're fighting it out in court still. Meanwhile, the DOE has purchased expensive air cleaners that were deemed subpar by independent testing. They don't have adequate distancing in the classroom. Testing is woefully inadequate at just about 10% every 2 weeks, soon to become weekly, but also, as you mentioned already, that it has to be to a subset of students that have consented, and then only a subset of those who parent have agreed to do so, including no pre-K or K students at all. That level of testing does not allow for contact tracing, which is the whole point of testing, not just for our memorabilia and scrapbooking purposes of what the pandemic looked like. So it shows, in the short amount of time since school has opened, thousands of students and staff have tested positive. Over 700 classrooms have closed. The case rate in the community as a whole, which was actually on the decline, Senator Liu, when we last spoke, if you remember, it has now again started to rise. To combat this, the mayor has announced a lax in quarantine rule so that unvaccinated students are no longer required to quarantine after a confirmed exposure if they were masked and 3 feet away. Classroom closures are going to become inexistent. And that's on top of the fact that they never actually told us at all what the criteria were for whole school investigation or closure in the first place. Now, as a scientist, as a physician, let me tell you, that is not how this works. That is not how any of this works. That's exactly what you would do if you were working for the virus and you wanted it to spread some more. Now, Senator, we need a remote option for the health and safety, not only of our students, our staff, but also our city. Schools aren't magic. Schools there's no force field around school to protect it from a virus. School exists within our community. As spread in school increases, spread in the community also increases. And we've seen this play out. We've all seen this play out. We've seen this movie. We know how it ends. Over 500,000 adults have already died in the US, over 500 children, many more suffering from long-term consequences of COVID. And healthcare workers, we're tired. But I'm not here on behalf of my kid. The truth is, my kid is home. But there's a bigger issue at heart, right? There's that of equity. The risk is not the same for every child. Some kids have pre-existing conditions. Some live in multi-generational households. Some don't even have access to a physician like me. And many community of colors have shouldered the greatest burden in the pandemic under the prevalence of comorbidities and other socioeconomic factors. And ultimately, I'm here because I believe that this is an inflection point. We'll look back at this moment and we'll all ask ourselves whether we've done everything we can to protect our children and our community. And I hope that you'll be with us in advocating for them. I'd like to say Dr. Awan was also just jointly sharing with me in the sentiments, and she wished she could be here today, but she couldn't. So she just wanted to say hi to you also.
Thank you so much. And now we'll pass it on to Carmen Feliciano to tell us some of the things that she's been seeing and building.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Carmen Feliciano, and I'm a parent of an elementary and a high school students. I'm here to talk about what's happening in the schools. There are shoulder-to-shoulder contact in the cafeteria during lunch and breakfast, number one. Number two, students playing, touching each other after school. Number three, no air conditioning or enough air purifiers in schools lunchrooms. What is enough? Four, parents picking up and dropping off students without masks. Number five, PPE not available in classrooms. Number six, staff and students not wearing their masks correctly. Number seven, students do not want to wear their mask. That includes the pre-K. These things are placing everyone at risk. 3 feet is a joke. They are lying to the public if they say they can. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carmen. And now we'll move on to Jennifer, who will speak about home install.
Good evening, Senator Liu. Thank you so much from our hearts for your taking action. What you're introducing is going to remedy so much of what we're talking about here tonight. So thank you. The mayor and chancellor have been talking a lot, putting aside concerns about medically fragile students and saying, don't worry about them. They're going to be eligible for remote learning. Well, unfortunately, they forget to finish that sentence and describe what exactly is medically necessary instruction. If you finish the sentences, they're eligible for 1 hour per day, 5 hours per week if they're in elementary age, and 10 hours per week if 2 hours per day if they are middle and high school. So, and I know about this sham of an education that they're providing because my son was accepted into the program. I guess I was supposed to be happy with that, but I'm not, because 1 hour per day of instruction is not an education. It's just a really great tutor. As of last week, the only instruction he received were 2 workbooks that his school was kind enough to share with us, but the DOE has locked him out of basically all of the apps that he had on his iPad, and we can't access anything. So the workbooks really don't make much sense. The teacher that the DOE provided via medically necessary instruction is extremely friendly, wonderful, very professional. But unfortunately, he can't provide anything more than an hour. Central told him to tell me that if I want a full day, I have to apply for in-person home instruction, which means someone is going to come into my house every day and expose my child to COVID. So I'm going to say no, thank you. And we're going to pass on that. And, you know, the whole idea of keeping him home and remote is to protect him from such a thing. It now means that because of his health disabilities, he is not receiving the same education as his peers, which leads me to say that that is the definition of learning loss. So last year, his grades in remote were above standards, exceeded standards, and now he is receiving 1 hour per day. And when he finally does get vaccinated and goes back, God willing, in December, he will be, hopefully, you know, I'm trying everything I can to prevent it, but he may not be where his peers are. And that is learning loss. So I'm very frustrated. And I just want the media, I want the politicians who are talking about this to not allow the DOE to keep playing this shell game that they're playing, being cute with what they're actually offering and pretending like what they're providing is a full education. Last night I was on a segment with you on CBS 2 where we were talking about this. Since that segment aired, I'm happy to report that the DOE was so embarrassed by this that they removed any evidence of it from their website today. So the form that I submitted along with his school back when used to say at the very top what you were eligible for, 5 hours per week. You go on the website now, look for it. You won't find it. There's no mention at all of what the DOE is actually offering students who are medically fragile. How can we trust people that act like this? I mean, this is like, I mean, it's beyond. So anyway, I just wanted to make you aware of that, and the media, if anybody are on the call, to please stop buying into, you know, the press releases that they are trying to feed you, because I actually have one of the products of this sham education who wants to say a few words, if you don't mind. My son very quickly would like to express to you this.
Hi, Senator Liu. I want a remote option. I have asthma and started pneumonia in my left lung when I was a baby. Last year, I got the remote option, but now I don't, in even a worse situation with COVID-19. And 1 hour a day of education is never and not acceptable. I should be getting 6 hours of education. Please fight for us children who can't get the vaccine.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Jennifer and August. And now we'll move on to Aixa Rodriguez, who will talk about the quarantine remote.
Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Awesome. So my name is Aixa Rodriguez. I'm an ESL teacher at a middle school in Manhattan, and I'm a member of MORE UFT, and I'm an ally in support of families that are part of this new coalition that has grown from just a group of parent leaders in the Bronx to be citywide. One of the things that I definitely need to be making very clear, it is near impossible to do social distancing. Ventilation is inconsistent. And even in where I'm at, which is a pleasant place to be, it's problematic. Being able to lean over huge bookcases and cabinets to even open up the window the few inches that it opens, having to take entire classroom libraries out just to make space, taking over an entire classroom for storage because we had to space the kids out. And even then it wasn't good enough. Then trying to figure out directions of flow of air and stuff. All of this is very frustrating. While we've been doing this, we have not had a serious amount of time to even get started with making our Google Classrooms, our digital classrooms. Some of us have a shell. Some of us haven't done anything at all because the time hasn't been dedicated for it, because everything else needs to be taken care of. We are in no way, shape, or form ready to pivot the way that it is being said that we're going to pivot. The transparency is not there. We're not able to just magically make remote happen. What the teachers want is to literally have a calm and clear understanding of what we need to do so that we can do it well. That's the problem. Having a remote option is great, but if it's poor quality, And it's the teachers having to invest time and love and care in developing the materials and putting stuff online and developing relationships with kids, then what's the point? It's just poor education. That's not what we want. So, there are many of us who are in classes pushing in. I'll give you an example. My classroom has the content teacher, the special educator, me, the ESL teacher, a para, and a student teacher in that room, which is, lovely to have that many adults, but at the same time, we're not being put to our full use. And our classroom is like 14 to 18 kids. We're very lucky in this particular school. And there's a lot of people who could be redistributed in different ways. I don't know who needs to make the rules about this, but I really feel as if staffing can be made, decisions could be made better. And part of it is definitely making sure that we are in compliance, but in the situation of having extra staff or having student teachers or having CUNY adjuncts who can teach online for the high schools, there has to be some type of innovative way, because most of the CUNY adjunct professors can get emergency certifications overnight because they have all the qualifications to do that. And so we want to talk about how we're not ready. We don't have the staff. We're concerned about the vaccine mandate causing some type of staffing implosion, especially with all of our support staff to help the schools go. So thank you. Please listen to these wonderful parents and look into staffing so we can have a remote option and do it well.
Thank you so much. And now we'll have Nazira Hanif, who will speak on the need to listen to parents and their circumstances.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nazira Hanif. I am a second grader at PS 56 in Queens. This year, I am not going to the building because I do not feel safe. I do not want to get sick in school and bring it home to my family. I am worried that I am missing schoolwork. We really need a remote option so I can stay healthy and keep learning. I know how dangerous Delta can be. The mayor does not seem very concerned with our safety. Can you please help to keep us safe, healthy, and being able to learn? Thank you, Senator Liu.
Thank you, Nazira. And how's your school in Richmond Hill doing?
I'm homeschooling.
I understand that. Okay. What now, Farah? Do I respond?
Yes, you can.
Okay, well, I think I've responded already. The bill is in, but more importantly than the bill, it's continuing to put pressure on the Department of Education and City Hall to provide this remote learning option. There's nothing that I disagree with. I agree with everything that people have said, from what Dr. Will said, and I don't, believe me, I have not forgotten the speech that you made on that crowded sidewalk. All the while I was worried about whether you were going to be all right or not, just speaking from the sidewalk like that. To Aisha, thank you for your service as well. And of course, we have Jennifer and her brilliant son. You guys were wonderful on Channel 2. Your partner wasn't bad either, so I'll give him a little bit of credit too. And it's just been a really a full throttle effort to protect our kids and get the education that they need. I want to give a shout out to Sheikh Musa, someone who I've known for a long time now. Good to see you, Sheikh. You're looking great as always, and a presence in the community on so many different fronts. And I hope Lady Drama is doing well as well. So the bill is introduced in both the state Senate and the state Assembly. Now, I've seen some of the quotes from the chat. They're coming in too fast, so I may have missed some of them. One of the questions is how quickly can we get this done? And so I have to give you news that you may not be happy with. It's something that I talked about at our last meeting with the Bronx parent leaders. Legislation is not an executive action. I wish I had an executive action, but legislation is long-term, it is deliberative, and it's by design not meant to have immediate impact. That's when changing laws, which is what this would do. It's not supposed to, by design, it's not immediate, it's not very fast. And in fact, practically speaking, the way the legislature works is that we're in Albany for half the year, and then we have to spend half the year back in our home districts because that's how we stay in touch with people. So the regular Albany schedule is January through June. That's when we go to Albany on a weekly basis. And in July through December, we have continuous meetings with constituents at home in our districts, understanding what's happening. So we're not scheduled to be in Albany until January. That is the normal process. Now, I and other legislators are always calling for additional sessions where we can come together and pass these bills. Usually there are emergency sessions. During COVID, we did have a number of emergency sessions. Earlier this, actually a month ago, in response to the Supreme Court's ruling that the eviction moratorium was somehow illegal, we came back to Albany on an emergency basis to fix the law so that we could keep people in their homes and not have mass evictions all across the city. So to the extent that we can elevate this to the level of an emergency, then at that point we can have some kind of session. So, I would need all the parent leaders not only to ask their legislators to support this bill, but also to call for a reconvening of the legislature in advance of our regular schedule. That's not an easy thing, and I don't want to raise expectations unrealistically, but the reality is that the plan is to pass this legislation very quickly in January or February, early part of February. But in the meantime, to implore the de Blasio administration in their final months to do the right thing. And so this is not the end of the fight. This is just another arrow in the quiver that we have in the fight to improve education for our kids. So the legislation is in the works, and in future crises, or heaven forbid, COVID continues through to the beginning of 2022, we will have this legislation that changes the law and requires the DOE to provide the remote option. But we can't just rely on this bill, the fact that it's been introduced. We have to keep the pressure on the DOE, which is what I'm doing, which is what Assemblymember Fernandez from the Bronx is doing. She is my partner, being the sponsor of the bill in the state assembly. We have a number of sponsors in the Senate already, including Senator Jackson, Senator Salazar, Senator Ramos from Queens, Senator Rivera from the Bronx, Senator Stavisky also from Queens, and the list continues to grow. So we have to keep on top of it. But one of the bigger issues that I'm also be very mindful of is the issue of mayoral control. We have, I think this is a clear example where I think it's a very strong argument, or certainly a big question mark on the efficacy of mayoral control, when the mayor seems to be completely, deaf to the ears of a substantial number of parents in our city. And I'm sure I know many of you have been talking about it already. Mayoral control expires next June. So in the spring, at the same time as we're passing the remote learning option bill, We also have to contemplate whether or not to extend mayoral control or to implement another system. I know how you feel, Farah. So let's continue to have this discussion. I know there are many other topics that you want to talk about, but that is where the legislation stands, and we have to keep putting pressure on the DOE to do the right thing. There are people in the Department of Education who absolutely agree that there should be a remote learning option, and these are the educators that I actually trust. The problem is that it's not that DOE is actually run by City Hall. And you can see from the daily briefings, it's the mayor who's calling all the shots. And somebody put in the chat before that the mayor is, for political reasons, not providing a remote option and forcing parents to send their kids to school, even if they may not feel that it's safe to do so. And that's a political move. I think last year, there was the mayor's intent to make a political statement that New York City was the first city to reopen for in-person learning. That's a good goal, but the reality is that it left a lot of kids behind. Last year, when the majority of parents in the city actually chose the remote option as opposed to sending their kids back into school. So he claimed credit for reopening the schools, when in fact, it was only a very small percentage of kids who actually were going back to in-person learning. And even if they were, it was just so, it was less than half the time. So now this year, he wants to make a certain claim, but that claim is at the expense, unnecessary, and I would say unconscionable expense of our kids and families.
Thank you so much, Senator Liu. I'm hoping you can stay a little bit behind because we are so short on time. Are you going to be with us after 7?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, because you had said 7:30, but there's other meetings I need to get to, but I am going to be with you until 7.
Until 7. So guys, we have to wash this through, because one of the things besides mayoral control, which we do want to get to, even though you spoke a little bit about it, but we are very concerned about ACS. So there are parents here who want to discuss that. And I think Alicia, right, will be the first one to speak on that.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Senator Liu. As you know, parents have been threatened with ACS if they do not send their children into unsafe school buildings. As a parent of 2 New York City public school students, this is just plain wrong. Parents need a choice of remote learning. No parent should be forced to choose between the health and safety of their family or having the schools call ACS on them. There should also be a code created that would basically say that the attendance is excused for the children that are not coming into schools because it is unsafe. Many parents do have a fear that ACS will be called on them if they do not send their children to school. So faced with no other choice, a lot of parents are reluctantly sending their children into schools now. And it's because they're being pressured by the mayor and the DOE, because they are sending notes home to parents and coming to check on children that have not been in school in the last 2.5 weeks. And the notes do say that they will contact ACS. I've seen these notes myself. It does say that they can and will contact ACS if there is, if the child does not come to school. Now, we can't threaten parents like this, knowing that they just want to keep their families safe. They want to keep their children safe. We all see what's going on all over the country, especially states that have opened up schools way before we did. You know, we're up to almost, I think, 500 pediatric deaths in the United States. We don't want to see something like that happen in New York. And most of these children did contract COVID in school when it opened up. So the fears of parents are rightfully, there, and they do not want to, have their children get sick. So I just want to thank you for working so hard with us after the DOE has put so many parents in an impossible situation. And the mayor is basically, like you said it, he's reckless. He just does not care at this point, and he wants to make himself look good. So again, I thank you, Senator Liu, for all of your help.
Thank you for that, Alicia. And Crystal, I'm going to give you like 45 seconds to add to what she just said. We're really short on time.
Okay, it's fine. First of all, thank you for agreeing to listen to us on this topic. And this is one that I myself have the most problems with. I'm a common sense thinker, and I can appreciate the way you approach regulations, that you think the same way. When I think about what's happening with them threatening to send an ACS case downtown on a parent who's refusing to send their child into a dangerous situation, by definition, the ACS agency was created to prevent the maltreatment of children. And so us keeping our kids home is in essence the same way that we would, prevent them from running into a burning building. If I prevented my child from running into a burning building, then I shouldn't be penalized with maltreatment case. And in addition to that, these cases stay with the child for a number of years past the time that they're filed and closed. So now you're saddling this family, right, with this burden of having this case open for almost a lifetime of their educational, development. And I just think that it's wrong. Common sense here says that if you're preventing harm from your child, then you shouldn't be charged with harming your child. Like, it's a contradiction, and it's so nerve-wracking to me that the government doesn't see this blatant contradiction that's going on. I think that at the end of the day, the classrooms now, my daughter is in school because for a number of reasons. Number one, I'm a working mom and I had to go to work. Like many families in New York who were, cut off from having the additional support and being able to stay at home. Now they're in the workforce and they're unable to do this homeschooling. Number two, and I'm just going to be clear, don't judge me, but even after the 5 YouTube videos that I watched, Common Core math was still beyond me. So I'm not able to. And I have a couple of degrees under my belt. Let's say there are parents who, are in the same situation where they cannot literally teach their child at home these topics because they're unable to, because they just don't know. So now you're forcing them to send their child into danger or a potential hazardous situation, and you're trying to penalize them if they don't. And I just think it's unfair. I think a part of this new law for remote learning should include an option which says that you're not going to be penalized, or that there's a different type of regulation that they can do other than creating this ACS situation for a family, because I've seen those cases break apart families, and they were developed for more extreme situations. This is not something that I would say warrants that type of action.
Thank you so much, Crystal. I don't know, Senator, if you want to respond on ACS or if you want us to go to another section. We'll skip.
I mean, I think the threats of sending ACS caseworkers after parents, that's it's an utterly outrageous tactic that the DOE is employing. Now, I'm hoping that the stories of ACS going after parents is not as bad as they sound. I would like to have any parents that you know of, or any of you who have been contacted by ACS, to know exactly what they've said to you or other parents, and we will be on top of this right away. This is something where I think universally my colleagues would be outraged about if ACS charged parents with any kind of neglect because they chose, for safety and health reasons, not to send their children into school buildings.
Thank you so much, Senator. So we're going to skip over to the segment about parent leadership and how we can work. Yeah, we're gonna come back to mayoral control, don't worry. But because I want the senator to hear this part, I think he's on board with us concerning mayoral control. So let's skip to that part first, and we'll go first to Pat Jewett, and then we'll try to go back to mayoral control. Thank you, Pat.
Okay. Good evening, Senator Lou. I remember
Good
you from
evening.
TWU.
All
And
right.
Roger sends his regards always.
Good
So
to
I'm
see
here
you.
tonight. Thank you. I'm here tonight to speak up for the fact that parents deserve an incentivizing civic engagement and collaboration among parent advocate groups. This is a way to get everybody to be able to share information. We want a way to making CEE, CEC resolutions binding documents so they can be respected by the DOE. A lot of times things happen at the CECs and the DOE disregards it. Like you said before, not only is the mayor disregarding the voices of the parents, but so is the DOE. So we want a way that we can make it inviting and open where parents can collaborate and share one CEC to another so that we're not just duplicating, but we're able, you're stronger together. We're able to come more together. So we want a way that this will be respected and considered and have an open debate with DOE and other education stakeholders, because this is important. I want each CEC to know what the other CEC is doing. And the DOE is not really providing that venue, that option, where there's a free exchange of names and emails, and so that we can just come together. I think about it. I mean, you do it. You have an opportunity to do that from January to June, right? When you're upstate, we need that here in the city. And we need that opportunity where whatever is happening at one CEC is openly shared. It's not just about it being a public meeting. It's about providing a way that this information can be shared without just free flowing. So.
Thank you so much for that, Pat. And I would add to that, not just CECs, but president's councils, PAs, and PTAs.
Definitely.
So that, parents are truly engaged and truly are able to impact on education, right? So that their kids, so that the best education for their kids can actually be available. So, and now we'll have, I'm sorry, Angela, we'll have a video from Angela Torres to speak about how elected officials and elected parent leaders can work together. Carla, please roll the video.
Good evening, Senator Lou. It's a pleasure to meet you. My name is Angela Torres, and I am an active parent leader here in the Bronx. I want to share with you today a little bit about the importance of making sure that elected parent leaders are working hand in hand with elected politicians in order to make sure that the abuses do not occur within the Department of Education. Because at the end of the day, it's our children, all of our children, who then pay the price if we don't work together on this very, very important task. We need to make sure that we take the know-how that parent leaders have in order to work together with politicians in order to get things done. These parent leaders were put into place because they have knowledge and expertise, because they've been in the ground, they've been in the classrooms, they've been talking with parents, and so they know what it is that's needed and what needs to get done. They have the inside ear to the ground. And so I can only imagine what life would look like if we were to have elected politicians working alongside elected officials that are in the schools, right? Parent leaders from CECs, from president's councils, from PTAs and PAs, all on the same page so that we can make sure that at the end of the day, our kids are protected. The possibilities are endless. And you have an important task at hand in helping to make this happen. Imagine we can let you know exactly what's going on, exactly what the concerns are, and then we can work together in order to make sure that it gets resolved and allow your constituency to know that you were right there at the forefront helping to make this whole thing happen. And so it really is going to be a wonderful world when we actually make this a reality. So thank you so much for listening, and I hope that you are able to be a leader in making elected officials work alongside the elected leaders of the various school bodies that are already established. There's no need to establish anything else, any other body, because there are so many bodies such as community education councils and parent groups, PTAs and PAs that are already established, and president's councils. So the time is to take advantage of the know-how, and we know that we can do it together. Thank you.
So to be clear, Senator Lou, so a lot of that are city issues, but I think what the parents want is for the state to intervene and force the hands of the DOE and the mayor to make this happen. But we'll wait, we'll have you respond now, please.
Yeah, I mean, as I said before, legislation is never as quick as I would like to see. I wish we could just issue some kind of legislative order right now to make it happen. That's unfortunately not the way our democracy or legislation actually works. So we have that. It's certainly weighing on the mayor and the Department of Education. At the same time, we have to all keep on top of the issue and keep putting pressure on the DOE to provide this remote option. On the issue of ACS, please let me know as soon as possible if you know of any cases where parents are being contacted and threatened by ACS. That is an important issue that needs to be addressed right away. And the larger issue of parental input, parents are the most important stakeholders in the Department of Education. Unfortunately, the voices often are not heard, which is why we're having this meeting right now, which is why I've had countless meetings with parent leaders all across the city on issues from remote learning. We've got a huge issue with students, disabled students, not getting the services, not getting the instruction, not even getting the transportation that they are required to receive under current law. So the Department of Education and City Hall, which is running the department, is failing on a number of fronts. I wish I could give them a report card. If the mayor and the DOE had a parent looking at the report cards, those parents would not be happy. So we have to keep talking about these issues and calling to action. Many of you have already taken action. Writing is a clear action. Those words mean a lot. They do not fall on deaf ears. And as I said before, we do have allies within the Department of Education. And the more we speak out, the more emboldened those allies are against the political decisions that are being made that run counter to the judgments of many of those professionals in the Department of Education who I really think they understand what the situation and know that remote is an option that needs to be provided. A remote option, I've long said, I said over a year ago when remote first came onto the scene that remote is going to be with us forever. It is a tool. It is an option that should be exercised. And actually, Mayor de Blasio acknowledged just as much. He said, for example, snow days are not going to be the same as they used to be because we now have the technology to continue the instruction. I mean, I feel bad for the kids. There may be fewer snowball fights or a little bit less sledding, but the reality is that we should be using technology to bolster education wherever possible. And that's true of snow days. That certainly is true of an ongoing pandemic when parents don't feel it's safe to send their kids back into these buildings. So we should be using this remote learning option. We spent so much money and resource developing it. It just seems ridiculous to essentially throw it out the window. And what Jennifer and her child has been going through, and that's just woefully inadequate. And by the way, Jennifer, I would like to get that information from you, the form that you showed us on the screen, and the fact that the DOE, in the aftermath of last night's news report, they changed their website in response. Changing a website is absolutely unacceptable without an explanation for why you're changing the website. So if an agency as important as the Department of Education is going to change the information on their website, they should continue to show what was up there and why they're changing, what the new rules or the new information would be. So please get me that information, Jennifer. But this certainly is not the end of it. We're going to continue to have these meetings. And Farah, you know my number, you know where I live. So when we need to have another meeting, whether it be in person or Zoom, then just let me know. And this is another example, having Zoom. As you know, at a little more than a month ago, Zoom was no longer an option for public meetings such as CEC meetings, community board meetings, other types of government-related meetings, because the state of emergency had been lifted, and so the in-person meetings were once again required. But the reality is that we realized that parents were so much more engaged when they could attend meetings virtually. I mean, it's not rocket science. You got kids at home that need to have their dinner and have their homework done, and you've got other things to worry about, other responsibilities to uphold. So parents engaging by Zoom, whether it be interactively or simply watching the meetings. We've had CEC meetings that have had hundreds and hundreds of parents engaged. So we're not about to take that option away. And in fact, legislatively, we did restore the ability for CECs and community boards, et cetera, to have their meetings online via Zoom. So just as we are using this tool to engage, whether it be for schools or for our jobs or whatever, we need to have this option, this tool for our children's learning.
Thank you so much, Senator. And I hope Sujin, I hope I'm saying the name right, will stay with us a little bit after the senator leaves, but I wanted to give Aisha the chance to make her closing statement in front of you, even if we're going to go back to manual control afterwards. Aisha?
Hi, Senator Lou, Farah, all my fellow council members and parent leaders and advocates. I really want to thank you all for this time. I know I've been kind of missing, but sometimes we have to take a step back and take care of ourselves. And I just want to amplify that and echo that to you all. Senator Lou, again, thank you so much for putting this bill in place, but I have to be honest with you, okay? I'm gonna ask a real question, because when Chancellor Carranza, the previous chancellor, was in office, I remember, and most of you may have been on that meeting, but we had it was about one of those 4 a.m. meetings or 1 a.m. meetings or something like that, and he was speaking about how students needed to be in school or New York State was going to cut funding, right? And so we were just like, well, why can't you tell them? And he was like, call New York State, call your senators, call your elected officials, right? And so a month after that, schools started cutting funding. And this is like in the height of the pandemic, right? In the height of the pandemic, towards the end of, what was it, last school year, they gave the money back. Okay. And right now, funding, they're threatening to cut funding for students or principals in schools because the enrollments have decreased. Okay, and so now I've spoken with principals, different educators across the my district in the Bronx, and they're now reporting staffing shortages, as Aisha did, as some of the other educators did. They don't even have substitutes, and as I stated, funding is being cut. So we know that legislation takes a long time, but it's just kind of like, what else do we need to show you all, right? That we need help, like you're penalizing us for not sending our children to schools. And I'm not saying you, but somebody has to be the person that says, listen, we have to shut down whatever it is we need to shut down to make sure that our constituents have what they need. Right. And to be honest with you, I'm kind of over the conversations at this point, because it's like, how can you not see that people's lives are at stake and we're literally declaring war on our own people? This is domestic terrorism to me. I'm a combat veteran, right? Service disabled. And that's what I feel like. So every time I have to come to one of these meetings and, just fight for things that we should automatically have, like the right to a quality education. That's a right in the parents' rights and responsibilities, according to New York state law and so many of the chancellor's regulations. So it's just kind of not really confusing, but really baffling to me that we're still here begging and pleading, and people are dying every day. And we know that getting the vaccine is not the end result. It is not the solution or the resolution to this pandemic that we're in. And we also need to really talk about how when we lose funding in our public schools, that opens up the space for charter schools. Okay. And then what happens to our students in the Black and Latinx communities who are already under resourced, who are already underfunded, right? Who already have overcrowded schools. Now we suffer even more. So, and again, I know this is falling on deaf ears, but I have to continue to, just share that. I wanted to share that point with you. So thank you again in my time. Thank you, everyone.
I don't think any of it is falling on deaf ears here. You got to keep at it, Isha.
Yes, sir.
And
Will do.
yeah, there last year, the existing state law did talk about attendance requirements for the continuation of state funding. We fixed it very quickly. I don't expect any school to lose funding because parents don't feel it's safe to send their children into schools.
Well, sir, I just want to share with you that principals already are reporting that they are going to be losing funding. So this is real on the ground, work. So whatever needs to be done, please advocate for our public schools and, rally up the people and put every resolution in place or bill that you must, because this is happening. And that's what they said the last time, that it was not going to happen. And by the time that the funds were put back into the schools, it was already too late. So thank you again.
Yeah, Isha, if you know of any schools that are faced with this problem, maybe offline you can let me know which ones they are. I'm not the DOE, so I'm not here to police the schools and the principals.
Of course.
I just want to know what the issues are, and I'll be advocating for those schools.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Senator, I think what Aisha is trying to bring up is the element of manipulation and misinformation
that and
exists
the intimidation.
in the intimidation, right, in the DOE. And that not all, but certain principals, certain teachers, certain superintendents, right, because now we're talking, across the city, are using against parents. And precisely to Patricia's point earlier, because parents cannot share information amongst themselves because there's no real connection amongst CECs in different districts, even though New York City is considered one district by the state, yet the way we operate in the city, it's like we're all in our different silos and we don't know what's going on, which makes it really easy for DOE personnel at times, not all of them, because I used to be a DOE personnel. I love, teachers and principals and all these folks and superintendents. Some of them are my best friends, but there is that element of intimidation and misleading information and all that stuff. And I think somehow the state does have to help in restructuring the DOE and how it operates.
Yeah, and this is precisely the reason that I have the honor and privilege of chairing the State Senate's Committee on New York City Education. We've long had a committee on education in the State Senate, obviously, but as you mentioned, there are close to 1,000 school districts in the state of New York City DOE being considered a single school district. So it's hard to get the attention of state government so precisely, which is why with the wisdom of our Senate Majority Leader, Andrew Stewart-Cousins, she designated a new standing committee just focused on New York City education. And she charged me with the responsibility of really keeping a very close eye on New York City schools and the Department of Education and City Hall and the kinds of decisions they are making with regard to our children's education. So that is why, my door is not only open, but, trying to get even more information as much as possible from all of you, our parent leaders.
Thank you so much for that. So I don't know if you're still going to stay with us, but we'll try to go back to mayoral control.
This is a big topic that I certainly will be addressing between now and the reconvening of the legislative session. And during the legislative session, Sujin will stay with you. I am late for another meeting, but I apologize for my technical glitch that took a few minutes away earlier on at the beginning of the meeting. We have a Senate hearing that's coming up in the first week of October, which you know about, Farah.
Yeah.
It's going to be a long hearing, and it's about foundation aid, which we greatly increased in the budget this year. Foundation aid, as you all know, is the basic funding from the state that goes to run every school in our state. And we want to hear from the Department of Education what they're doing with that additional money from the state, and also what they've been doing with the additional federal funding that they've gotten during this COVID crisis. And we'll also hear from all the other stakeholders as to what they think the Department of Education has been doing with that money, and whether they think the DOE has been using the money properly and effectively, or has it been used in some unwise with some unwise decisions. So that's a hearing that's coming up in the spring. We're certainly going to be talking about mayoral control, and so stay tuned and stay engaged, which I know you all will be.
Thank you so much, Senator Liu. It was a pleasure having you here. We always enjoy talking to you. So we'll be in touch soon, and we will be at that hearing, and we will, we want your partnership. So, we're not going to go away. So thank you for that.
It's been a privilege and a pleasure talking with all of you, and I'm looking forward to our next meeting.
Thank you. And so have a good evening. Enjoy. And I guess we'll continue. Yes. We'll
continue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening. So yes. So now, Amy, we'll go back to you for mayoral control. So Sujin, I might be mispronouncing your name. You should say something if I am. I feel so bad.
Right, your pronunciation of my name is perfect.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Yeah. So Amy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Farah. Thank you, Sojin, to stay behind. I think Senator Liu had kind of covered everything about our frustration and how we want to move forward on mayor control needs to go. we definitely had saw that example during this unprecedented time of this health pandemic. A lot of decisions were made by one person without any of the parents and the stakeholders in the educational system. One man who refuses to shut the system down prior to March 13th, Friday, 2020. After the plea and begging of parents and educators, knowing that we are in a pandemic and that lives will be taken if we continue not to close schools down. Even though we were in remote immediately, returning back to school in fall, there was a survey that was sent out right before school started, and that survey was misleading. It was false. It's interpreted as a way of, if you fill in the survey to choose for remote, which was the assumption, parents, which we know was a very small percentage, was basically put in a very difficult situation, and found out later that it was actually very different. Knowing that there's 60% of the entire New York City population chose to stay home, chose to keep their kids safe, educators choosing to get accommodations and choosing to have to work from home to teach their students. Last year was definitely a year that still the mayor and the Department of Education has not learned from its mistakes and its many challenges that still have not been fixed. And there are challenges prior to this pandemic 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, which we still are facing. Coming into this summer, where the mayor and the chancellor was very excited to Summer Rising as an example of knowing that it was not going to work, as it continued to have those guidance and those protocols still not effective. Really lessening some of those guidance to where less testing, less quarantine time, safety in the building was still not being monitored and managed. Some of these things that we all address again and again, even the second year coming into this school year. So, as we talked about remote option from all of our speakers tonight, and our ACS concerns, and how one man can't make a decision, and what our future mayor, he or she may take, cannot make that decision for all. So we're asking, how can we really support this movement of removing mayor control, because it has not worked. It has not worked prior to this pandemic. It has not worked for our children with disabilities, our children that ride transportation. As we know, this is not just a remote option issue. This is about all of our kids not having the access to learning wherever they are. A lot of children are staying home because they don't have a bus pair. They don't have a bus route to get to school. A lot of the bus companies are not even working because they have a shorter staff. There are these issues that yet we as parents and as educators for those special needs students either are in a special education, our District 75 program, they're not included at the table for conversation to solution making, resolutions, and making sure that our system is to its highest potential for all students. And so we are seeking the senator and his fellow state representatives to help us try to, really engage on a hands-on, focusing in crafting and creating legislation with remote option, as well as future legislative policies that really affect and impact our children here in New York City. We are really suggesting that creating a focus group of all the stakeholders, and that we are at the table, and that we really doing some of the work that can lead into specific task force that all representatives in New York State can be a part of to make legislation actually be effective. And especially when we're talking about transportation, we're talking not just about the unions, but we're talking about bus drivers, the matrons, mechanics that deal with buses, because if buses don't run because they're old and they're grandpa, this is the issues that we continuously decades still suffer from. And Senator Liu knows that I am a huge advocate for our children with special needs and a huge advocate for transportation. And we saw this issue on, and especially right now, currently we have children at home because they don't have a bus service, because they don't have a para. And we know that that's going to be dragged out until the Department of Education and the city of New York find a way to get our kids back to where they need to, either school or to an agency that can support their services. So I appreciate you staying here and hearing us parents and educators and all of us, the parties of members here in the New York City Coalition for Educating Families Together, because that's what it's about. It's about community leadership, not just on a school leadership team, not just a district leadership team, not just on a CC, but a citywide leadership team that parents at the table and making those decisions that are impacting our children and our future children. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Amy. And I guess Sujin, I don't know if you want to answer on behalf of the senator or what have you.
Well, we hear you, we heard you, and I'm going to relay your message to Senator Liu promptly so that he will better understand about what's going on. And of course, he knows, but then I'm going to reiterate one more time, once again. Yeah, that's why I'm here. So let me know more about the situation. And I have something to tell you, Jennifer. We are receiving a phone call from our constituent who have same situation, same issues about the ACS. They're receiving a call from ACS because they don't send their kids to school. So we are we are aware of this situation. So well, I just want to let you know, you're not the only one. Did you hear me, Jennifer? Oh, well, okay, that's it. And then, well, if you can go ahead, Vera.
Thank you so much. I think she cannot unmute herself, but that's okay. Technology.
Wait, wait, I was able to unmute myself, but I could barely hear you. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Did anybody else have problems hearing?
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now, Clara? Can you hear me?
I hear you, but Jennifer cannot hear you. So technology. So it's okay. So thank you so much, Sujin, for staying behind, and thank you again to the senator for spending this time with us. We are very grateful for the time and for the platform to be heard. And I guess, I'll say thank you to all the parents and all the stakeholders who joined us either on the webinar or via Twitter. We are an organization that is in the middle of being revamped. So we give ourselves a little pat on the back for even pulling tonight off. So thank you for that. And I thank you all for joining us, because I didn't even think that we would have been able to pull those numbers together, and we did. So that's actually pretty good. And I want to give a shout out to Jennifer, Carla, Benga, and Amy, and and Shake, right? And all these folks who work, tirelessly behind the scenes so that we could, under a week, something like a little bit over a week, right, come together and have another successful roundtable with elected officials who are, willing to listen to us. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a great night. Thank you, Sujin, again. Have a great night. And for those of us who are in the leadership or parents who want to debrief, we'll see you on the other side with that other link. Good night, everyone.
Good night,
Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Having me.